Hi, Ryan. I wanted to say thank you, first off, for letting me read your response because a lot of the things that you wrote provoked lots of questions in myself that I hadn't asked when first thinking about consciousness within the different things that we studied. So, thank you for that. And going into it, I thought that you had some really profound thoughts within the first part of your essay. Especially, this one really stuck with me, was the idea that the new axial age was the start of humanity. Now, I had never really made the connection that in order to be a person within humanity that you needed to have consciousness, but the more I think about it is that by being able to develop develop an individual sense of self and develop a consciousness and be able to ask those questions of yourself, I think that is what defines humanity, is that we're all acting as individuals within one society. So I think that that was really interesting, is that connection between the beginning of consciousness and the beginning of humanity. So I think that that's interesting that you see them as two parallel things going down the same route at the same time. So I thought that was interesting, something I hadn't thought about within my own response. Another thing that you said within your first paragraph that really stuck out to me was how you asked the question, I wonder what life was like before the axial age, or before there was a developed consciousness within people. And I thought it was a really good question because it ended up provoking a question within myself, wondering that how we would survive now without a sense of consciousness, because so much of our individual life is based off of asking these broad questions and going and finding answers. That's what this whole class is about. So it just was interesting to me to think about how life was before, because people obviously were able to exist, but now I think that it would be really difficult because we've had so many profound we found so many profound things within the world, and I think that it would be interesting to go back to learning based on what the leader of the group had to say and accepting that, rather than thinking individually and being able to ask big questions and find and develop a sense of self down your own path in an individual way. So I thought that that was really interesting because I hadn't really thought about it. Another thing that you pointed out within your response that I also pointed out in my response was the idea about Buddha that was presented in the essay, is that I thought that that was a really unique representation of how one of the great founders of philosophy came to figure out his own sense of consciousness. I thought it was really interesting because the way I said it in my response is it was kind of feeling like, while I'm not going to be a great prophet, I'm kind of going through the same idea, is that I've really never studied philosophy before, and now I'm having this opportunity to start asking these questions and start down my own road to completely developing my consciousness. So I thought that was interesting that you pointed it out, and that was just my thought about it. And then let's see. Another thing that I really enjoyed within your response was how you made the connection between our present world and the changes that are necessary to consider. I thought that that was really interesting because within the time of the different religions, I think it's important to see that we as individuals need to make changes within society in order for it to be more equal between everybody, especially with prison reform and college tuition. I just really liked how you made that connection between the two, and seeing that change is inevitable, and change is also something that's going to lead to better things within our society. And we can see it in our history of philosophy developing consciousness, as well as now needing to make those changes in order for things to be more equal amongst everybody. And then the final thing that I thought that really stood out to me was how you talked about the science and consciousness, the science versus philosophy. I thought that that was really interesting because I, like you, felt like within those the videos that we watched, they were grasping a tiny bit, trying to make that connection between consciousness and science, because there's not a full, complete way to prove that that's correct at this point. So yeah, I think that they have a little bit of overlap. I don't completely agree with you that saying that consciousness is completely separate from science. However, I think that it's going to take a long time before we're able to fully understand how consciousness works, especially because it's not broad and you can't make an assumption based on everybody, because everybody's level of consciousness, as well as the way that they are conscious within themselves, is completely different. So yeah, I thought that you had a lot of really good ideas that were thought provoking for me, and I appreciate you letting me respond to your essay. Thanks.